The O'Reilly Factor is on tonight.
There's just no chance that this was an Al-Qaeda attack.
The New York Times claiming Al-Qaeda was not involved in the embassy attack in Benghazi, Libya. But congressional investigators on both sides of the aisle disagree. We'll get to the bottom of the dispute.
What difference at this point does it make?
And how will the new Benghazi report impact Hillary Clinton's chances in 2016? We'll take a look.
Duck Dynasty is part of a majority white supremacist culture.
Plus, race baiters attack A&E for allowing Duck Dynasty patriarch Phil Robertson back on the show. We'll take a look at the decision and the fallout.
Get this over with.
Caution, you're about to enter the no spin zone, and the factor begins right now. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham, in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Let's get right to the top story. Over the weekend, the New York Times published an extensive investigation into last year's terrorist attack in Benghazi that left 4 Americans dead, including U.S. Ambassador to Libya, Christopher Stevens.
There's just no chance that this was an Al-Qaeda attack if, by Al-Qaeda, you mean the organization founded by Osama bin Laden. This is a group of armed men who, inspired by a video, deliberately attacked the compound.
Well, those claims directly contradict what Congress has said about the attack. And joining me now to explain is Congressman Mike Rogers, a Republican from Michigan, and he's chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, there's not a lot that takes my breath away in this town after having been here for almost 20 years now. Yeah. But this certainly took the cake, because back in, I think it was October of 2012, right after the 9/11-12 attack, New York Times reported that, and I think we have the graphic to throw it up on the screen, that some Al-Qaeda-related fighters were operating training camps right near that diplomatic mission in Benghazi. The Obama administration received intel reports that Islamic extremist groups were operating. Yeah. Now, he doesn't mention, by the way, that report in the New York Times investigation.
Yeah, it was shocking to me, and I've tried to do a thorough investigation of this. So some things that the administration said didn't happen, and some on the other side aisle said that did happen. I investigated those, couldn't find evidence of it. But to say to some conclusion that there was no Al-Qaeda involvement, or there was no sense of at least a degree of pre-planning, is mystifying to me.
Well, I'm going to play the reporter here. Sure. He's going to say, look, we were on the ground. Mm-hmm. We interviewed dozens and dozens of people with direct knowledge of what happened that night, and we could find no direct links to Al-Qaeda. That is what he's like. We've done the stuff that we are supposed to do in the New York Times, which is reporting. How do you respond to that?
Well, I was an FBI agent. I never met a guilty man in jail. Right? If you're going to interview people who participated in the attack, and they understand that that means that they're going to be at least of interest to the United States, it's really hard to gain a complete assessment. You would have to interview those people. You'd have to do neighbor canvasses. You would have to go through and talk to all of the intelligence gatherers leading up to the event and subsequent to the event. They didn't do any of that. Think of this. 4,000 cables we reviewed in the committee in our investigation leading up to the event to talk about the changing dynamics. Was Al-Qaeda involved? It was clear that a threat of Al-Qaeda was involved in aspirational, meaning they wanted to do something like this.
Does that mean they did it, though?
I do believe they did. They clearly participated in the event.
What's going on at the New York Times? Why this report? Yeah. Why now? I mean, that is dovetailing into the political question, is it not? I mean, we're getting into the midterm elections. Might be dominated by things more like the economy or Obamacare, but nevertheless, Mrs. Clinton needs this to go away, does she not? I mean, this could be a problem for her.
I don't want to speculate. I just am shocked that a major newspaper in the United States would have the same talking points that the administration had the day after the event. If you recall, I was on this network the same time that Susan Rice was on the 12th, saying, hey, clearly this was an organized, if not Al-Qaeda, a terrorist.
Sunday show appearances.
Yeah, exactly. I was on the same show that weekend. It was shocking to me that now, and that narrative never changed.
The video, in other words, that obscure video was at the center of this attack, and that was reported again in the New York Times. The conclusion was that video kind of fueled the attack that night in Benghazi. But wasn't it the case that, Catherine Herridge reviewed, and Fox News did the report, Catherine filed it, that all these social media posts that were examined, I think it was about 4,000, showed no mention of that video until the day after the Benghazi attack. So again, I'm not following the New York Times reporting on this. And since it seems so out of sync with what even the New York Times has reported, why do it? What's motivating it? Is it a bald-faced attempt to help Hillary Clinton? I mean, I think people are going to ask that question. People are going to say it's unfair for me to raise it. But it does seem strange. When Gregory Hicks said, the top diplomatic staffer at the mission, he testified on Capitol Hill that his jaw dropped when Rice testified to that video.
Absolutely. Well, think of this. So I'm the chairman of the committee. That night, early the next morning, had the occasion to review the first report that came out, which clearly identified it as a terrorist attack, which, number one, wouldn't necessarily lead to be Al-Qaeda, but we knew there were Al-Qaeda affiliated groups. Then you look at all of those cables that we reviewed leading up to it, where the intelligence folks on the ground were saying, place is getting dangerous, and there are Al-Qaeda groups and Al-Qaeda affiliated groups operating in the area who have expressed an interest in committing an act. And it was on 9/11. It's pretty hard to pass the smell test.
Are we not back at the point where we're supposed to connect the dots? I mean, everyone talked about, we didn't connect the dots before 9/11, the first 9/11, and we're back at the situation with hundreds of billions of dollars spent on this new security apparatus, new intelligence gathering, and yet we still couldn't stop this attack. I think Americans wonder, what price are we paying here?
This is an important fact. I think what happened here is the very fact that bad decisions were made that led to the success of the attack, not that the attack couldn't be stopped. They made decisions based on their political narrative, and that, I think, contributed to those deaths of those Americans on 9/11 in Libya that day.
What difference does it make, Congressman, really? I mean, that's going to be the line. That's the what difference does it make. We really appreciate you spending time. Happy New Year.
Thanks.
And next on the rundown, is the New York Times Benghazi story giving cover to Hillary Clinton as she mulls that 2016 presidential run? And later, A&E is now under fire from liberals for allowing Phil Robertson back on Duck Dynasty. Those stories up ahead.